Same at my work. Security won't do it.
The November 9th Planning Board meeting is called to order. Will everyone stand for our Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we have our open forum. Would anyone like to speak this evening? Seeing no one.
Seeing no one in the audience.
Seeing no one. We are going to move to the approval of the minutes. I need a motion.
Don't you want to swear people in first?
I'm sorry.
Can you swear
Anyone here
people
to
in?
speak?
Doesn't she have to swear in?
Oh, yes. Do I need to swear in, Tatiana? I'm sorry.
Yes, we'll do the swearing in.
Okay, let's do the swearing in.
We don't have any individuals here tonight, but do you swear the testimony you are about to give is the truth, so help you before God? Thank you.
Thank you.
Move to approve the
So
minutes?
move to approve the minutes.
So move.
Second.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes of the October meeting are approved.
August 10th.
The August 10th meeting are approved. Thank you. So items on our agenda tonight. CA 22-10, City of Oldsmar Code Amendment to Section 517 to revise fence placement requirements. City of Oldsmar Planning and Redevelopment, 100 State Street West, Oldsmar.
Hello, Tatiana Childress, City of Oldsmar Planning and Redevelopment Director. So this is CA 2210, code amendments to section 5.1.7, decreasing the fence setback of the sidewalk from 5 feet to 2 feet in the residential districts. In January of this year, the city approved ordinance 2022-05, which redefined secondary front yards and included additional provisions for fence placements, requiring a 5-foot setback from the back of the sidewalk to the new fence. Since then, city received multiple complaints regarding new setback requirements, and the technical review committee reevaluated the original code amendment that was approved in 22 of January of this year and agreed to reduce the setbacks from 5 feet to 2 feet. The following slides demonstrate where this amendment will be applicable. So it's anywhere within your front setback area of your front yard. Next to the public sidewalk, as demonstrated on this graphic, you'll see that with the new amendment, that requirement will be 2 feet when the back of the sidewalk is aligning with your property line. This is just a closer look, demonstrating that in this instance, you will be required, well, there's actually maybe a little bit more than 2 feet in this instance, but this is just for demonstration purposes. So this text amendment was evaluated according to Article 3, Section 3.13.2, Standards for Approval. The amendment complies with the comprehensive plan and advances the purpose of the Land Development Code. The proposed amendment will allow residents to maximize their yard area, enjoy their property rights, while still providing adequate offset of 2 feet for sidewalk repair and maintenance. The amendment will contribute to promote the community's welfare. A 2-foot setback was determined to be sufficient for potential sidewalk maintenance and repair, and the amendment will not grant a special privilege to an individual property owner. The code provision will be applied uniformly throughout the city in all residential districts. And based on the discussion, staff recommends approval of the text amendment to decrease the fence setback to the back of the public sidewalk from 5 feet to 2 feet in the residential districts. Do you have any questions?
Tatiana, any questions for staff?
You want to start with me?
I would love to start with you.
You all will have to forgive me. Believe it or not, my dog ate my hearing aids, and I don't get my new ones until
Want to borrow one of mine?
We'd love to start with you.
Hate these damn things.
Anyway, yeah, I remember we talked about this once before, not too long ago. and I remember then, if it were me, I would say no setback from the sidewalk. I understand why, you get, because of the repairs and maintenance, and I understand why. I still don't, I don't think it's good to take property away from people, but I do understand why it's this way. And I'm glad they did go from 5 to 2 at least. 1 would have been better, but, no, I understand this, and, I'm all in favor, yeah.
Anyone else? Questions for staff?
I have a question. Why was it 5 feet originally?
Originally, it was proposed to be 5 feet for consistency with any new plats. So the newer subdivisions will require 5 foot from the back of the sidewalk. So that would be additional right-of-way that most subdivisions have today. And it's also for mowing your lawn and stuff like this. But it was determined that 2 feet is sufficient.
But my concern is, I'm thinking, I know I've been at an intersection before in my car, not in Oldsmar, where I couldn't see if traffic was coming because of a fence on the corners. So.
I see. I didn't add original slide, so the clear side triangle will still be, any project will still be evaluated for the clear side triangle. That's where the placement of the fence will be evaluated for any visual kind of like obstruction from the corners.
No, understood.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I don't have maybe it is a question. The amendment will not grant special privilege to individual property owner. Now, I am a player in this because my lot line is 4'8" and 4 feet from the sidewalk. But because it's going to be
Applied
coded in-
uniformly throughout any residential
So-
districts, and as I mentioned, we received multiple complaints,
Right.
As well as complaint from one of the board members, so.
So therefore, I don't think I need to fill out a conflict of interest form because it doesn't benefit me individually. Benefits everyone with a corner lot in the city.
Did you take this up with Kathy or Ann?
Well,
before the meeting?
where's Tom? Yeah, we talked about it, but when I read line 3, I said, I don't need to recuse myself.
So this is a recommendation, board recommends usually just a recommendation to the council. Kathy, what?
Hey, I don't need to vote. As long as you all, as long as it gets, as long as the council sees the logic in this, I don't have a problem with it, but I don't need to vote. I can just abstain.
Why don't we hear if there are other questions and see, and see where it goes, but seems like this would be something that would have been discussed prior to the meeting.
This would be affecting only property owners that live on the corner lots or any property owners that would like to place fence in their front yard, with the sidewalk being in the location where the back of the sidewalk is the property line. There are very few lots, residential lots within the city that fall under that category. So while I'm stating here that it will benefit everybody in the city, it's everybody in the city who meets the criteria, not the criteria, but who falls under the category of corner lots, sidewalk on the property line, and all of the above that I just enlisted. So in that case, since we do have a quorum,
Yeah, was
maybe it will be a
recommended.
good idea since,
It
yes,
was
you
my
would be in that.
recommendation for the city to move the sidewalk, because they were asking me to relinquish $14,000 worth of my property, which was 700 square feet. And it's like, you really can't do that. So you need to, this is an old Oldsmar. Everyone else is platted correctly, but in old Oldsmar, you'll find the sidewalk doesn't even match. It's 4'8" to 4 feet. It's crooked. So move your sidewalk. Don't make me move my land. So Tatiana and I had many discussions of this, and the solution appeared to be the solution they're presenting. And and she said, she was so surprised that so many people went, wait a minute, because she got more than one complaint over this, the original 5-foot thing.
Okay.
And we have complaints on the other hand as well. So prior to this, to answer your question about 5-foot setback, we had complaints from residents who complained that the fence was placed right on the sidewalk, at which point we recommended to offset it 5 feet, or in this instance, now it's 2 feet. So when you walk your dog, or if you just walk on the sidewalk, you don't want to be walking next to a wall that is right next to the sidewalk, so your dog can't even walk at that point in the grass. So it goes both ways. So we receive complaints from both sides, and this seems to be the solution to address both of them at this time.
I feel it's an excellent compromise.
Okay, if any other board members have a question for staff.
Yeah, I forgot to say something. This is just a statement, this is not anything. I'm concerned about, like I said, I would prefer it to be right up against the sidewalk, but I'm concerned about, since it's even 2 feet, how many homeowners are gonna cut behind the fence but not in front of the fence?
You have to,
You
but-
got this area here, and they're gonna let it grow, or they're gonna just not cut it and let it grow up,
No.
That's just a thought that I had and a
Code
concern.
requires you to maintain.
Pardon me?
Code requires you to maintain.
Oh, I know
it.
that, I know, but that's code.
Silly me.
And in order to enforce code, things have to happen. So I'm just, and it doesn't always happen, because we've got 2 people in our neighborhood that hardly ever cut the grass.
Oh, just 2?
Until
You're
code
lucky.
enforcement comes out.
Just 2? You're lucky.
Yeah. These are the 2 right across the street from me.
Not next door, huh? Questions for staff from anyone else? Okay, so I have a couple. One is, so you're saying this is only for corner lots? That's what you said a little while ago, it was just the
It
corner
will
lot.
affect people that wanted to place fence on the corner lot. Anywhere where you wanted to, well, corner lots, they have double frontage. So
Right.
not that many people have fences in their front yards. And the sidewalk is usually located in the right-of-way next to kind of like your front yard.
Right,
So since corner lots have both the secondary front and the front yard, if you remember, we redefined the secondary yards. And in certain instances, the sidewalk will be running on your secondary front, so that's why I mentioned secondary front. But actually, anybody who wanted to put today, by code, so 6-foot fence in the secondary front yard, placed next to the sidewalk, or a 3.5-foot fence on your front yard, it was by the original ordinance that was adopted in 2022, in January 2022, both of those instances would still require 5-foot setback from the back of the sidewalk to the new fence. So be it the front yard with the 3.5, or a secondary front yard corner lot with the 6-foot fence. In other instances, you're next to your neighbor, so you wouldn't be placing the fence against the sidewalk because you're inner lots.
okay.
So-
So my question was, this only applies to residents that have corner lots?
No, this applies to any
Anyone? Okay,
residents with the front fence yard, with the 3.5 by current zoning,
right.
or corner lot with the 6-foot fence or 3.5-foot fence.
Okay, so anyone in Oldsmar can put a fence in their front yard or their secondary front yard being on a sidewalk on their side, if they're a corner lot, 2 feet from the back side of the sidewalk.
Correct. And it's
According
only
to
applied
this.
to cases when the back of the sidewalk is your property line. We have very few lots that are in that category. So all of the newer subdivisions, they're designed with a 5-foot setback, but it's within the public right-of-way or easement of some sort. The older subdivisions, sidewalks were placed in a manner where your property line would be the back of the sidewalk, whether, I'm not sure, 30 years ago or when the sidewalks were placed 50 years ago. So in some of the older subdivisions, we do have an instance for some lots, and that's why we thought that it wouldn't even affect that many people. And then all of a sudden, when the ordinance was adopted, we started receiving these requests for 3-foot sidewalk in the front yard, and we realized that 5-foot will take that 5 feet away from your front yard, and then there's not that much room for your privacy in the front yard or being a corner lot on the secondary front.
So between January and now, you've received multiple complaints.
We received 3 complaints and 1 inquiry, all related to the placement of the sidewalk. All 3 cases had this situation where the back of the sidewalk was in line with the property line. Whether it's a coincidence,
But the newer properties are platted where it's 5 feet from the sidewalk is their property line. So they don't own that 5 feet. But
Correct.
the older properties actually own that 5 feet, but the city is making the fence back further from their property
Correct.
line to accommodate a city ordinance.
yes,
And so that's where the complaints come from.
correct.
Do I understand this correctly?
That sounds about right.
So, to your point, when you're walking down a street, because, looking at the vision that the city has for our walkways and making a walkable city. So when you're walking down a city sidewalk and you're walking next to, like you said, a 6-foot privacy fence along the city, so you have 2 properties that back up, so that whole side street would potentially be a privacy fence 6 feet high that was a very close distance from the sidewalk,
2 feet.
2 feet, 24 inches, right? So potentially, anyone that had a property with a secondary front could put a 6-foot privacy fence up along that secondary front on both sides of the street. So I'm just trying to envision potentially what this could look like if everyone chose to move their fences and erect privacy fences. So I'm just trying to look at it from longevity rather than in the moment and see, what is the vision that we have here? And just make sure that I understood, what's being proposed. And to your
That will
question
only be
about-
for back-to-back lots, so I'm trying to visualize what was just described, but in many instances, you'll just have one corner lot. And then beyond that corner lot, you'll have driveways from both sides, and it will be the front yard of the adjacent property.
So I live next door to a beautiful property, and I know the city, for almost two years, I think, they had a 3-foot fence, but they weren't able to put the slats on the fence because it didn't meet some kind of ordinance, I'm not sure. And it's a couple feet back, and they do a beautiful landscaping job, but to your point, there's a strip about this wide on my side. And I mentioned, hey, your guys aren't mowing over there.
Yeah.
And, I do my own yard. I don't have a landscaping company come. And so I stopped mowing it, and it's about this high now. It's getting ready to creep over his fence and start looking at him. And he's a great neighbor, and it's very awkward. But to your point, I can see where if we have all these fences that are blocking and there's these little strips of grass. This particular neighbor has landscaped beautifully on that 5-foot setback. I think we need to just think a little deeper here, and I know you disagree, but the older properties were not, platted with this forward thinking of, what might be needed in the future, so.
Well, hopefully in the future, when a sidewalk is replaced by the city, in those instances, there will be a 5-foot setback from that property line. But today,
In the newer properties. But
on the existing properties, when the new sidewalks, when the city has funding to replace the sidewalks in the future, the alignment of the sidewalk will change where it is placed properly, 5 feet away from the property line. Not
Okay.
encroaching into the property, right, into the property,
Okay,
individual property.
I saw some slides of what the vision is for the walkways and the sidewalks, and doing something like this now, I think the city might run into some problems when they get ready to start rolling out some of those ideas. Because if you have a 2-foot setback at this time, I just envision that there might be some issues with it.
So there were no setbacks required prior to January 2022. And a couple of properties did place the 3.5-foot sidewalk, fence right next to the sidewalk. It created complaints. It's also sort of kind of like unsafe if you walk on the sidewalk. What if you trip and you may hit that
Right.
fence or something? So there's multiple issues with either scenarios. This one gives you 2 feet at least from the sidewalk.
Are you envisioning any people that have built according to the current ordinance who put their setback and have built their fences already 5 feet back, within months?
We've received 3 of those requests. One request was withdrawn completely, so they decided once they found out that it's 5 feet away from the back of the sidewalk, they decided not to place it there at all, the fence, I mean. The other is still on hold, and the third one was just an inquiry. So we don't have that many of them. When I said a few, so to be specific, we received 3 inquiries regarding the fence placement.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to kind of get a
Sure.
clear picture of what we're talking about here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? For staff?
I have another question now that you were talking about thinking forward to the future. I was thinking about when I moved to Oldsmar, how some of the sidewalks, like down by Shore Drive, have been made a lot wider. So if that happens in the future, what's going to happen to this 2 feet? How's that going to be accommodated?
So again, when the new sidewalk, and we're talking about master planning for sidewalk of some sort, which is outside of the scope of this presentation right now, it will be an engineering firm who will evaluate the topography, and they will produce the alignment that will meet the city's code, and the sidewalk or a trail hopefully will not be placed right on the property line at that point. So it will be maintained, it will be for consistency offset at least 5 feet, or in some instances maybe even more than 5 feet from the property line, if right-of-way permits in certain areas. Again, this is only affecting the older section of Oldsmar with the original plat.
If I may comment, you would build that big trail sidewalk into the easement. You know,
Okay.
the easement
The
that I
right-of-way.
mow, that's 25 feet wide.
You
I
think so?
maintain it. You would put that sidewalk into that easement, not toward the property owner's property.
On this graphic here, so if you see, so in the front of the sidewalk, this is all public right-of-way, right here. So that sidewalk could move with the future alignment away from the property line when that sidewalk replacement takes place. I don't know if it's gonna be 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now.
Okay. Thank you, Tatiana. Seeing no one here for comment. Then I'm looking for a motion on this agenda
Before-
item.
Before we do that, I think we need to clear up the
The
voting
voting.
of Mr. Rambour. I mean,
I'll abstain from the vote.
thank you. It was recommended to me that that's what you do since you had a
I got no
project
problem with
pending.
that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion on CA 22-10.
I'd like to recommend to City Council the approval of CA 22-10, the Oldsmar Code Amendment, Section 517, to revise fence placement requirements.
Second.
Thank you. And a roll call vote for that, and we'll start with you tonight.
Aye.
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 And I,
So CA 2210 is approved with 5 votes for and 0 against, Mr. Rambour abstaining.
seeing no other agenda items,
Move to adjourn?
second?
I
This meeting is adjourned. See, what's the bill thing? What's it doing over there?